future of public education in Vermont. My name is Megan Roy. I'm the chair of the commission, and most of the commission is here. In a second, I'll have them introduce ourselves. I want to start by saying that some of you have sort of tuned in on the screen, and so you might know some of this, and some of you are brand new. This is the first time you're thinking about it. One of the things that we know as a commission is that it's really important to us to hear from as much of Vermont as we can as we do this work. And we also know that we want to be really thoughtful and mindful and planful with how we do that. And so one of the first things we did was decide that we want a communication and engagement consultant to support the commission. We don't have that consultant yet, but we didn't want to wait and lose the opportunity to meet with people when we are traveling around. And so that is what today is all about. So we have planned a session that hopefully gives you some information on how the commission works. Hopefully we spend most of our time hearing from the folks in the room and having discussions amongst yourselves and as a group. We seem at the moment to be sized well enough for that. We do have some folks on the screen that we will weave in. But we'll learn from how tonight goes, and we will help our consultants as they come on board learn about what works and what didn't work. And so thank you for being kind of our first group. With that, here is what we cannot see the bottom, but we'll help you with that. Here's what we think we're going to do today. Everything you see on the screen will be posted to the website later. So there are links in here that you can refer to. Get out of the way. We want to give you a little bit about the purpose of the commission and kind of an overview of what we've been asked to do. We don't want to spend too much time on that, but we think that's important context for you. We'll give you a little bit of an overview of kind of the context for public education in Vermont, who's responsible for it, and why is it so complex right now. That includes an overview of our education finance system. And we really want to make sure that this is the part you can't see, but that community members are engaged about this work. And so we are not going to stand and talk to you this entire time. After each of these sections, we'll have some discussions with folks in the room. So first, duties of the commission. So the commission was convened by the passage of Act 183. And this is our charge. So we are charged with studying the provision of education in Vermont and making recommendations for a statewide vision for Vermont's public education system to ensure that all students are afforded substantially equal educational opportunities and an efficient, sustainable, and stable education system. A lot of jargon in that, but that is our charge. Our charge is to make recommendations. We do not make decisions for the commission. Our job is to research and study, make a recommendation. Here's who we are. I'm going to ask each member. I'm going to pass the mic around. I'm Megan Roy again. I'm the chair of the commission, and I am on the commission because I was the former chair of the Census-Based Funding Advisory Group, which is an advisory group that Vermont changed how they fund special education. Yep.
They have control of that. Everything?
Thanks. Hi, and as always, representative for the Vermont School Board Association.
Hi, my name is Mike Clay. I'm the superintendent of the Harvard University and I'm a representative of the Vermont Superintendent Association.
Good evening, Reverend Jay Nichols, Executive Director of Vermont Principals Association, and an appointee for the VBA.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Peter Coleman, and I'm the appointee from the Vermont House.
Good evening, I'm Ann Cummings. I'm the appointee from the Vermont Senate, and I chair the Finance Committee.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Craig Bolio, Tax Commissioner.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jennifer Jack Samuelson. I'm the chair of the Vermont State Board of Education. Thanks for coming.
Jeff Newton, Executive Director of Vermont VA, and Vermont VA appointee to the commission.
Good evening, I'm Zoe Saunders, Interim Secretary of Education.
Good evening, all. Listen, I'm the appointee of the Vermont Independent Schools Association.
Good evening, I'm John Cathell. I'm the Executive Director for the Vermont Rural Education Collaborative.
Thanks, everyone. We have a couple of members who are not able to join us. I believe Elizabeth Jennings, representative from the school modification for business official rules, and that might be it. So that's, and we are, we talked a little bit about what this format should be, and we want to do the best we can to just kind of listen to what your conversations are. So we'll be wandering around during the discussion. So I'm going to give a little bit of information about the duties of the commission. First, we are required to conduct at least 14 public meetings, and at least one meeting of the commission or subcommittee has to be held in each county. So the meeting at the Agency of Education in Washington County, they are here, and will continue to rotate around the state. That our goal is for full commission meetings to rotate around the state. It's possible that subcommittee meetings will also rotate. All of our meetings have virtual option to attend. And again, you'll hear us say this over and over. Part of the reason we're contracting with a communications consultant is so that they can help us with this. We will likely have virtual only options for participation, forums, and events to continue on. There is some mileage reimbursement for members of the commission. I think that's important to understand that folks in the commission are volunteers. We are here appointed to represent our organization. We are responsible for submitting final recommendations for public comment by October 1st, 2025. That public comment period is specified. It has to be at least 30 days. That the process must include a public outreach plan, and that any feedback we get from that public input process has to be added to the final report. The substance of that report, there's 3 policy considerations that we have to look at. We need to make recommendations about our education finance system, geared toward an education system that affords substantially equal access to a phone call about. The language in this is directly from the law. So we have to make recommendations about our education finance system, how we pay for education, how we raise money, how we spend money. We need to make recommendations around education governance, resources, and administration. This has to do with our Agency of Education, our State Board of Education, decision-making, what decisions are made at the local level and what are made at the state level. We need to integrate career and technical education into this conversation. And the commission needs to make recommendations about the physical size and footprint of our education system. So we talk a lot about the delivery model. How do we deliver education? How many schools do we operate? How many schools do we operate? There's a lot in here. Tuition, to access education outside of Vermont. Things that there was not making recommendations about.
I had with Justin, it's like,
From that, those are really, that's a hefty charge. There's a lot in that. There's a lot that we're responsible for doing. And here's how we're required to deliver that. We needed to start our work on or before July 15th. We did that. We needed to submit a work plan and communication plan. We can all rotate around during discussion with copies. We have a copy of our framework for how we're approaching our work, a copy of our communication framework, and a copy of our guiding principles, which I'll talk about in a second. All of the we need to do that by September. The most important or soonest deadline that we have right now is we need to create a report with preliminary findings and recommendations, including short-term cost containment recommendations by this December 2024. So we started that conversation. We tried to build our work plan to get us there. We had a substantive discussion today. Very short time. That is what we are charged to do. Our final report is due December 1st, 2025. a year to be able to develop that report. And that report by December 15th should include legislative language. And if this continues as it's meant to, this group will not exist after. Talking a lot, I promise I'm not address anything, but I have to give this background knowledge part. So our commission early on agreed that we needed to have a set of guiding principles that would help us in our decision making. We know that these are hard things, that we are going to make recommendations that are difficult for folks, that touch on things that are very, that require a lot of change. And in doing so, we need to understand how are we making those decisions? What are our guiding principles? So this is what the commission agreed to. The first is an acknowledgement that in Vermont, based on our constitution, the state is responsible for education. They choose to deliver that education by delegating authority to local school boards and districts, but that's a choice. And ultimately, the responsibility and authority lies with the state. We also know that there is a long tradition of local decision-making in Vermont, and there's a tension between those two. So this is an acknowledgement more than it is a principle, but it's something that we keep at our forefront. It's very important to the commission that we centering equity for Vermont students. There's lots of ways to define equity, but we understand these core understandings. And the first one is that equity does not mean equal or same. Solutions with an equity focus sometimes are differentiated by need. So if a community or a town or students require more in order to receive that education, then those resources need to be distributed that way. And equity, we have to think about equity in terms of what students access and how they do. So both inputs, what they have access to, and outputs, what are their outcomes? How do they do? We have a guiding principle of quality. We want to make sure that the decisions we make maintain quality for students across the board. This language, equitable, inclusive, anti-racist, culturally responsive, and anti-discriminatory, that comes from both our education quality standards and the rules that govern independent schools in Vermont. So that is central. And the bottom bullet, again, sorry, you can't see behind the chairs, but sustainability and affordability. We need to have an education system that's affordable for Vermont. These are our guidelines. You do not need to read this. There is a document up here, but our charge is significant and we needed to divide it into a manageable way to approach the work. And so we have decided that there is a dedicated focus on communication and engagement. As I said, this is the first step toward that. It will not be the only step. It's really important for us to seek input from Vermonters. We are only 13 people. 13 people can't possibly represent all of the perspectives of everyone in the state. And so we need to figure out how to bring those perspectives in. So we are committed to that work. We know that we need to look at the education finance system, delivery system, and governance. Those are those other three levers. You need to spend time on each one of those things. The work is chunked out, but we also know they all intersect. We talked a lot about that today. So, I don't want you to try to read that. But how we are organizing ourselves. We have 3 subcommittees. The first one, the steering group, is written into the law. The steering group is made up of 2 representatives from the administration, or nominated by the administration, 2 nominated by the Senate, 2 nominated by the House. I am a member of that group as a chair to be able to help organize that. We also, the steering group is charged in the law with identifying an education finance subcommittee on the far right. And those are the members of the finance system. That is the only committee by law that can have an outside member. We have 1 outside member on the finance committee. And the communication and engagement subcommittee, the commission decided to have that subcommittee so that we could focus on this So far, this committee is responsible for organizing this session and also securing our communication. These are our goals. I'm not going to read this here, but we want, as we go out into schools, communities, and hear from folks, we want people to have the information they need to be able to inform us. What do you all need to know about our context in Vermont to be able to give input? We're going to learn from you about what else you might need to know as part of this process. We want to spend most of our time listening and gathering information and hearing from folks about what they believe. And this last piece is, partner and influence. It's like one step beyond just listening, and the extent to which the public has an ability to influence the decision making of the commission. That is the goal, is to win engagement so that we can do that. That's all that I'm going to talk to you about. So we went back and forth a little bit about how to best facilitate it. I think that we are a manageable enough group in person. And someone managing those listening meetings. So if they have something to say, we will invite you in. But our hope is that first, you can just take a few minutes, probably 2 or 3 minutes, to turn and talk to the people next to you, just to kind of prime. The conversation is, what are the strengths of public education in Vermont? And then after we've had a few minutes to talk amongst yourselves, we'll pass the mic and kind of ask for folks to share. So, turn and talk.
These are making speakers are sending sound down. And then it bounces back and coming in. There's one.
Thank you.
Talk about lunch, and we'll kind of go back and forth. Does anybody want to start? Yeah. Somebody else can start? Some folks still would like to be a minute.
So one of the things we talked about in terms of the strength of public education in Vermont is just knowing our students really well. So I think that that's one thing that's positive about actual things and that.
I would say high quality, school teaching. I would say the commitment and passion and dedication of the human capital that sits in mind.
Talk about the strength of the schooling system and we talk about, our systems are strength, diversity, passion that happens when the entire one school.
We talked about the strength of the community and the community connections that our schools have, that we see, the elementary students walking into town and it's, truly integrated into the community. We also talked about the strength of the physical education, natural resources here. And just that I think at this state, we strongly value education and I think that that's a strength.
Well, class sizes, I'm coming from schools with over 30 in the classroom, and here I can have a reasonable size class, and the students can actually learn.
Level of care, I think that comes from the various parts of the not only the state, but I think most importantly, parents, students themselves, and their voices, whether they are learning. That's been a big part of how we change schools in the 20 years. Again, the fact that we're small enough to be able to do this, we get to care about what we're doing as educators, and really putting kids first.
Yeah.
On 5 minutes. I got it. On screen, Morgan. Okay. We're gonna see how well we can hear. If we need to, we'll hold the mic up. Sarah. Sarah, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for calling on me, even though I'm not in the room with you. I think that one of the biggest strengths about Vermont schools is their role in town communities, especially rural schools. They're the center for so many things for communities. Often they're one of the biggest employers in the town. And they're also a big center for different activities. So they play a really important role.
Thanks, Sarah. Anyone else from the room?
Hi, Jeff. That works. So, John already talked about the current context. In large, it's, we are guided by the 1997 decision of the Vermont Supreme Court of Brigham, state versus Brigham, known as the Brigham decision. And essentially what it said is it didn't matter. I jokingly refer to this as elevation, right? It used to be that, the tax rate depended on the elevation. The higher you were, the ski down, the lower your tax rate was. And the Brigham decision said that's not acceptable. Our Constitution says it's an obligation to provide public education to all students. And so they decided, they didn't decide how to fund schools now. They said that the old system was unconstitutional. And they left it to the legislature to create a system that would equitably fund, gives kids, all kids in the state, an equitable and equal opportunity to access the funds. And it didn't mean that your school would absolutely spend the same as every other school district in the state. It just meant that you have equal access. So if you raise a certain sum of money in one town, it's the same tax rate, it's the same as a town in another part of the state. Well, that's the current context. It's supposed to be designed to distribute access to money equally. And then local school boards decide what their needs. They look around at their student body, their community, their school system, the structures, what do they need to fund their public school system. They set a spending level. And essentially what you do is you send that budget into the state at the legislature raises through tax rates statewide and funds to fund those schools throughout the state. So it's a state locally decided decision how to fund, how much to spend on our students, and then a statewide obligation to fund it. That's the current context, and I don't know if John said you were unshackled and then go at it, but I don't know, there may be more to it. So we go to another slide. So what are some of the challenges of this current delivery system? And what ideas do you have to address? That's a discussion topic sentence for your question. We hope we'll discuss that amongst yourselves and others and what's next.
Yeah, and maybe we'll give folks more time in your smaller groups, because I think we kind of moved on and I think we'll end up with plenty of time, so. We'll let you generate some more discussion and then we'll move to forward.
What was the biggest? Talking about the current delivery system, and you can find your current.
The current challenge, what are the current?
No, what is the current delivery system current? Found the funding, okay, not just. Yes, I love you. Yeah.
It just seems.
Next time, when you're trying to listen, are you true players? Right, you're just passing around. There's something hard to write on.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
That's exactly.
Ready to go? There we go. Go ahead.
I think
Would like to share. Lots of really good conversations back. I love to get some of the ideas.
one of the biggest challenges that we have right now in our education system is that we as a school are trying to meet many of our community social needs as well as our educational needs. So we're serving as hub for mental health, hub for our physical health, hub for food service, where we have a lot of needs that we're trying to provide in our education.
All right, thank you. So one of the items that we discussed in our small group here is this idea that we actually don't have just one current delivery system, we have multiple delivery systems. And you know, I mean, we've got a scenario right now where a lot of significant portion of our public education tax dollars are going to private and religious schools in the state, out of the state, out of the country. And with those dollars coming a different set of rules that those institutions follow in order to be able to receive those dollars. And so, you know, our hope is that the commission is kind of still trying to set some that, dives into the data, you know, to try to get the data around what is the cost for current voucher system to the public taxpayer in Vermont, so that we can start to have an informed discussion and maybe make some decisions from there.
Two things. One is that I'm hopeful that the conversation finally in Vermont can be on taking on one of grades for group some of the current issues in the state of Vermont. And previous district that I worked at, there was a situation where these elementary school were small, and it was a great idea about how to be able to consolidate that school. And the families of kids that were going to be directly affected by the closing of their school didn't want it. And as a result, they're highly organized, very articulate, and very passionate about kids. And we are passionate about kids too. People, parents, people, kids, people, educators, no question about that. But the idea of having incredibly small classes, you know, taught by a few teachers, the inequities are screaming, you know, in terms of that situation. Vermont, unfortunately, and I've lived here since I graduated from the University of Vermont. I'm from New York City originally. You know, and one of the things I love about what you've been able to accomplish through the public education system is just that you make it other people by the people for the people. It's amazing in terms of what Vermont's been able to accomplish. You know, I do not see how we can't continue to do those things with regional schools. I think we absolutely can do it. You know, and the other piece I would give just in terms of consolidating, not harm what folks are most concerned about. And I think that parents, including myself, need to get our arms around the idea that a consolidated school might take a few more minutes on the school bus. That's true. You know, but there are much larger issues at play here. And the state of Vermont's commitment to local control is fantastic. I think you can have local input as opposed to local control. There's something to really consider there. You know, and I'm sure the legislators are very concerned about voicing that. I'm hopeful that groups like this, and we listened to earlier this afternoon, will be able to give some voice to that. The commission is not just taking all the heats. Last piece, I just want to get my hat to the commission. You are fighting multiple front battles here. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for taking this huge undertaking on. You know, this is a remarkable piece that you're doing here because it's really trying to change the DNA of education in Vermont. And we've done it really well for a really long time. You know, but as a result of that, let's keep building on that work and just helping people understand we can continue to create quality experience for our kids and have our teachers be supported, but looking at it in a way that's not going to have people lose their homes.
So, staying on the topic of education, and I had a long discussion about the real need to think about funding education, not through property tax, but through income tax, which is a far more effective way to ask people to contribute to the education of our children. It's the same.
One other part of that discussion that we talked about was kind of the parallels between the funding crisis in education and in healthcare. And sort of picking up, you know, backgrading the Brigham decision is almost being parallel in that a mandate and obligate the state to provide a public good and I would argue human rights, both education and healthcare. But without really figuring out fully how that can be funded in an equitable way. And so as a result of that, sort of like living in the limbo or chaos of not having it figured out. And one just aspect of the challenge I wanted to highlight was the way that the increasing cost of health insurance, right, which has been skyrocketing for a while, so at least I've been paying attention to the union. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I have to imagine that as a major driver in the cost of education and sort of thinking about what would it look like to apply the same principle of equity that we were talking about with funding through income tax as well as healthcare. And I guess the short way of saying, how could we get the cost of private insurance off the books of a school and fund our healthcare system in a publicly financed way and ensure people access to everybody's. Not saying that's not without significant challenges, but it seems to be really at the part of the picture of how we really get a handle on the finance situation.
I'd just like to add along the lines of right-sizing classrooms, that it's too big of an ask to ask a librarian or an art teacher or a nurse to spread themselves over 3 schools. And it's also not big enough of an ask to ask me to teach AP statistics to 12 kids.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo what this young lady back here started out this conversation, phase in the conversation. The bus stops at schools for a lot of kids and families, social services that are being provided, and the list goes on and on. There's a gentleman named Jamie Bowler, E-L-L-M-E-R, book. It's dated now, it's probably a couple decades old, but it's called Schools Cannot Do It Alone. And he started out with a list of 18 things that schools have taken on over the years since World War II. Because obviously now we've added, I think we're up to 40 last time. So do yourself a favor, it's a short video. Davy Ballmer's Blueberry Story. Google that. Davy Ballmer was a businessman. He wants schools to be run like a business. And the Blueberry Story is about a 6-minute video. Tells how a teacher, he was speaking to a group of teachers at an assembly, and one teacher in the audience spun him around and how he supports public schools, doesn't want them to run like businesses. So, Jamie Bowman, Blueberry Story, check it out.
I also just wanted to thank the commission for bringing this well. I think we've given you an attack, and I'm really grateful to you for your courage to taking it on. And using it as an opportunity to help us understand what the challenges we face and what the opportunities are moving forward. I've been knocking on a lot of doors, and I want you to know that we are not where we were 3 years ago, when I'm hearing people saying that the building has certain problems and we need to change. And so I hope you will work with that. I think there's daily ways that we can honor what we care about, which is our children, and figure out how to do it in a way that doesn't mean that we're afraid in their homes, which is what I'm hearing right now. So please trust them. They know what to do and they want to do it. I think I was just going to echo what was said. We have to have a conversation about it. There was a lot that was wrong in the Pike's report, which was issued recently, did point out that when you start to spread kids like grassseed, that reduces scale. And when you lose scale, you lose the level to provide equitable high quality affordable education. They identify the after school in the Pike model, which is a model so affordable. All the after schools are provided through school district because it's going to make good use of that. You can bring down over by 30% because you don't have to keep renting or buying or building new facilities. And you have pre-kindergarten. If you don't do pre-kindergarten graduates and you go to the school district contract or provided within house, they can bring down the cost of it by using the savings practices. And the same thing is true of tuition.
in my area, public school can't afford to raise their class size because they're competing head to head for students in private schools that are marketing about on the basis of class size for 5, 6, 7. They lose more dollars by losing students than they do gain by raising class size. We are stuck, and I need your vision and your help getting into this. You also have to take very seriously this issue of caution, and it's not just in healthcare, it's not just in mental health. We are also seeing that as districts begin to bring in-house social services, they often aren't accessing Medicaid, so we're actually leaving federal dollars on the table, which means back from the education fund. We are also moving activities that used to be historically under the VIOLA, the Workforce Initiative Act, into the education fund and still budget. We can't do those things, but if we do those things and decide that the right way, we are also choosing on the bill and we have to deal with it. So I just wanted us to be very thoughtful. And then the last comment is we really have to make sure the data is accurate and really we're going to look at lots and lots of data. I appreciate that the commission has sort of thrown out the net and I know more data will be coming in. Much of the data we use recently is in so when we think about the data collection, we are getting this sort of result and I know school districts including and we look at it and that's we can put funding back to the district of origin, but we don't count all the students who are going to repeatedly get a certain result or the people spending on something like that. And this is systemic and pervasive error, which needs to be because it erodes the trust of the doctors in our ability to do the work. So please be careful to make sure that the design uses that. Thank you.
Additional feedback?
I wanted to share one thing that our group had a chance to talk about, and then one other thing that we didn't. So one thing we spoke about was trying to give students more ownership in their education delivery system. So for example, here was 2 students that are in the same room, and one of them is telling you that they need a smaller class size, that they need more support, that they need more hands-on stuff, they need a slower pace. They're telling you what their needs are, and in an environment where they also have students where like more academically more asking for more academic rigor, faster pace. They're okay with a harder class size. They want more traditional learning. It's hard to meet the needs of both those types of students in the same environment. So giving opportunities for students to get the type of learning environment they're actually seeking might help. Something we didn't get a chance to talk about was an issue that I see, which is students feeling almost a level of entitlement because of the amount of services that we are providing them, and not really recognizing as students how much we are giving up or giving to them. So, for example, students able to travel overseas for $0. They don't know how much that costs. Students able to get all of their school supplies. They don't realize how much that costs. And so they're being given a pencil in class, breaking it into pieces and throwing it in the trash. Or something else similar to that, like they're registered to go on this trip and then 2 weeks before they're like, sorry, I don't feel like it. And not really recognizing how much people are giving up and what they're doing.
I would just like to first appreciate the commission and the work. Second, I hope that the commission will address the issues around supporting the adults that are doing all of this work. I think that, statistically, principals see that rate of 50% by year 3 and 4. when people will stay teachers, but the teachers are leaving at that rate as well. I think some of what has happened is, and you're in this room, there is so much being put on everyone's plate and very little in terms of external support to the adults.
Thank you for the opportunity to make a suggestion tonight. My name is Greg Hughes. I'm from Bethel, and I'm part of the Vermont group of us that are Friends of Vermont Public Education. We're a grassroots group, and we're trying to remedy the problem we got here. And my suggestion is this. There are many forces influencing the cost of education in Vermont, and most of them are out of our control. However, one of the things within the legislature's control is the state schools voucher program. School vouchers have caused Vermont to move away from our constitutional commitments and our core values. Property taxes have skyrocketed because we are now funding 3 educational systems in Vermont. We are funding public schools, private schools, and religious schools. We have turned our school budgets into a source of funds for various private interests, and at this point, school budgets are compelled to fund programs that promote discrimination, segregation, and the misuse of public funds. Prior to 1991, non-tuition students needed to attend a private school or one of the traditional academies. In 1991, things changed, and the vouchers would be paid to private schools. Over time, the Vermont voucher program has facilitated the development of a private school system with negligible regulation, minimal oversight, and complete independence from duly elected school boards. At this point, with the declining school-age population and excess capacity in our public schools, we no longer need to spend public money to support private schools. The Vermont voucher program clearly needs to be revised. In 2022, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a decision in a case called Carson v. Navy. The Supreme Court held that the state need not pay funds to private schools, but once it does, it cannot exclude religious schools. In Vermont since 1777, we've had a clause in our state constitution often called the compelled support clause, and it prohibits the state from providing unrestricted public funds to religious schools. The legislature is now faced with the task of reconciling Carson v. Navy with the express mandate of our state constitution. There's 2 options for Vermont. We can choose to ignore the compelled support clause, which is what we're doing now, and continue to make tuition payments to religious schools and private schools, or we can follow our state's constitution. It's time for Vermont to call the question regarding the compelled support clause. If we recognize our constitutional mandate and not provide funds to religious schools, we would then also be precluded from funding private schools, and taxpayers would be expected to support only public education. The alternative is to continue to subsidize all 3 education systems, and there will be no tax relief in sight. The reality is that if Vermont was to stop donating public money to private religious schools, it would have a profound effect on the economic viability of many public school districts. My suggestion to the Finance Subcommittee is that they dedicate some resources to study this and determine the impact on the cost and quality of education if we were to basically roll back the school vouchers program to how it existed prior to 1991. This has a strong potential to lower our taxes, and the taxpayers of Vermont deserve to see at least what the financial impact of a proposed legislation would be. Thank you for your consideration.
Right, anyone on the screen?
Have her hand up, but you.
Okay. And then just wait next day for that reminder. Okay, we have one more discussion round. Couple members are going to not attempt to provide a training effort on the different funding system beyond the scope of this evening. But they are going to give a little bit of an overview.
Good, yes. Thank you. So I'm going to spend the next 2 hours going through my second hour. So seriously, it's Vermont's education financing system is complex. And complex for a reason, because whenever you're dealing with tax policy, there's a strong correlation between equity and complexity. These are the simple, often it masks equities as a system becomes complex. There's a strong tendency towards greater. So we have a very complex system. We have a history of changes in our education finance system in decades. Until 2003, shelf life education finance system in Vermont was about 10 years. It's now been about 20 years since Act 68 was a law of land, which came just a few years after Act 60. The big thing that came up with the Brigham case was prior to Brigham, and you know, education was predominantly funded through local property taxes, mainly the local grant list, with state support. What happened is the state gradually starved the system, state support, was a property tax rule. There were lawsuits that gave us Brigham, which gave us Act 60 and then Act 68. So under Act 68, which is the law of the land, we have two grant, we split the grant list. We have a residential property tax rate and a non-residential property tax rate. Non-residential property tax rate is a fixed sort of uniform rate across the state. The residential tax rate is variable based on your school spending. There's a lot of other variables, but to keep it really simple, the only thing you really need to keep in mind is your per pupil spending is really what sets your tax rate. Now, these tax rates are full budget decisions are made based on the number of pupils you have, that gets you your spending, which that gets you your tax rate, that raises revenue, that gets you your pot, gets you distributed fund, everybody's just cost to pay it. So it's very confusing, it's very complex, because we have a shared funding system, but we have individual budget decisions made at a local level that result in local property tax rules. I think that's it. The only other key point I want to highlight is because of this change we made post Brigham, where property tax rates, while they may vary from town to town, the revenue that's generated may vary quite dramatically from town to town because your local property level has really no impact. The system is designed that way for this very specific purpose of addressing those economic concerns that they came out about decision. Next, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague here to talk about some of our funding challenges.
And just that, on what Oliver said, one of the constructs behind the budget was the same equal amount of paying to raise the dollar tax rate for people paying taxes. So that if I live in a town that had lots of resources versus somebody who lived in a town that didn't have a lot of resources, would be equalized because the state was saying we have a responsibility to adequately fund education for all kids. So just filling out that, here are a couple of things under financial for cost drivers. Obviously, personnel. About 80% of school budgets in the state of Vermont, on average, have to do with salaries and benefits of employees. Special education costs, if you followed education since 1974, you know that we passed the special education federal law that said the federal government was going to pay 40% of special education costs. In Vermont, I think 1 year we was fined 17% paid by the federal government, so that hasn't happened. And then we also have issues with facilities. There's been a lot of big studies. There's talk of the hundreds of millions of dollars it would take just to get our facilities, our current schools up to adequate standard. Tuition, as been mentioned already. Revenue generation and uses of the ed fund. There are many uses of the ed fund that the commission will be looking at as to whether or not those are appropriate uses for things that may be funded out of the education fund that other states are not funded out of their education fund. Delivery models, the second thing we look at here, class and school size, district size, and infrastructure. That's where the conversations around consolidation, potentially closing schools come into play.
And then the governance piece is around resources and administration, decision-making about school size, structure, budget. We don't have local control in Vermont, the way some states have it, that's in local control. We have micro. Now, we're very, very small. And we have more school board members per capita by far than any other state in the United States. There's advantages to that. Our people are very engaged in public education, we've had a tradition of passing their budgets. There's some disadvantages to that too. I can remember when Nicole Mason from Chartered School Boards Association, she told me one time that about 90% of school board elections, nobody ran. One person ran, nobody ran against them, it was not a contest. And I think that's probably still the same today. And then the last thing that you can't see here at the bottom, how local school systems choose to spend their education dollars impacts costs and quality, and that's why it's important. Not just the cost piece, but also making sure that our kids get a high quality education.
And this is our last round of conversations, very similar cadence of the question. This is specific to finance. So in your same groups, what questions do you have about the finance system and what suggestions do you have about our finance? We will take about 10 minutes. 5 or 10 minutes until the conversation back on in small groups, then we will pass the mic again. Then we'll do a quick preview of where the commission is headed next, and we will have an opportunity to kind of pass the mic one more time in case folks have something to say that wasn't related to any of the problems that we folks.
Yes.
All there, like the whole game is on the backside of this.
Now I take certain.
Today, we really. Yeah, but. Yeah. All right. So you want to wrap up your conversation? We're ready to pass the mic. Which group has the solution? Because you're gonna get the mic first.
I just fascinated about this is without anything to say, so I apologize. But one of the things that I think might be considered is, I've heard a lot of talk about,
getting certain non-educational things out of the education fund. I haven't heard anybody talk about things like, taking a second look at their common use program and, deciding whether that really belongs to the education fund or the tax control finance districts. Deciding whether that belongs in the education fund. And I think there are a lot of other smaller non-education related things that I might consider looking at. And I just wanted to also, give you all the commission a couple of words of encouragement. Besides, thank you for the inviting opportunity to be on that. I want you to remember that, there are advantages to being small. We constantly are trying to scale down things to our size, our mistakes, our ideas. That's time for policy, but, there are advantages to being small. We don't have 6 degrees of separation, we have 2, if that, degrees of separation, and we are capable of heavy lifts. And, I just want you to think about, what we do have, what we can use, where we can go, thanks to our science.
Yes, so somebody brought up, the question of, funding for special education. The federal government has mandated funding, but has never actually lived up to pay. And as some states with this enormous debt that keeps growing and growing, the challenges of students these days are even way beyond what they were when I was in school. And I think it's about time that the federal government do something and live up to its obligation and fund this, because this will make a huge difference, not just in Vermont, but the rest of the country. This is the joke that we have enough money to fund wars all over the place, but we don't have enough money for our kids and our special needs kids, especially the ones who are at risk the most. I mean, come on, we could do a lot better than this. And it's about time. I mean, Senator Sanders has raised this issue in the past and has gotten nowhere, but it's about time to step up and they can do that. The question of the private schools, it should be noted too that there are 4 private schools in the state of Vermont that are seemingly beyond the realm of control by the legislature. For some reason, I don't know, I don't really understand it, but they are not part of the usual discussion. So they are exempt from any kind of, they raise more money or have more money than anybody, and they are still getting funds from the state. And I would like the commission to investigate that and see why they are still getting this incredible gift. What makes them so special for the rest of the state has to suffer because of that.
So we talked a little bit about the financing, and one of the things is the non-urban household property tax in many towns actually being less than the residential. And could we reach that, make them pay more and maybe decouple the private businesses, Vermont businesses, because we don't want to chase them away. But we definitely want, second, I ran into a woman who had to leave Woodstock because she said we don't have a second home. She got third and fourth homeowners, and she couldn't afford to live there. So we need to definitely take a look at that. Third, and then I will look at it again for, maybe not the key E5, E4, level, but when we look at, infrastructure needs and just the demographics, not only in Vermont, but we're seeing it nationwide too. Figuring out how to meet the needs of students at that higher level and staff. We have a lot more opportunities for students. We have JV students so that we have more experiences, you can have theater programs that have enough students, music programs that have enough students. At the end. So I think we need to look at that, we need to look at our geography. It's really hard because we have that, that's true. Really really hard. I wonder if that's looking forward in the next years.
So one of the things that was mentioned in the cost drivers section of the slideshow was personnel costs. And one of the things I mentioned in our group was the idea that that's, doesn't really, it doesn't have enough detail to be valid. Being personnel costs are complicated in schools. I feel like the cost of student-facing personnel is one thing, and that's completely separate from administrative personnel and education system in general. I think the administrative bloat is something that we're talking about, especially in terms of the costs, because those employees can be more expensive. And I don't think that student-facing personnel should be on the chopping block at this point in the process.
Maybe I'll just close by. I was wondering if there's a way to make where the money goes more transparent, and that might be in our local budget and also at the state level, like, you know, someone with a clever infographic that might, you know, help engage people in a, you know, with more knowledge, because I think people are sort of addressing this issue and we don't know. For example, I don't know, you know, where the tax burden, like, is it increasing terribly? Like, I, you know, I know what's happening for myself, and it's not too bad, but like, I don't know, you know, what, are people losing their homes? Are people like, what, you know, where is the tax burden being increased? Where is it, you know, the same level? Like some sort of, you know, easily digestible information, or but maybe more easily digestible information might help people be more informed about this. And I think, as much, you know, any way that we can increase transparency, I think would be helpful.
Whatever we can do to help the commission with making this an assets-based conversation, not a deficit-based conversation in the future. The taxes are investments. Taxes are investments in the future. The same would be for infrastructure, the same would be for job creation, creating home, developing great homes, schools are obviously investments for the future. The assets that we have in Vermont that we've been willing to invest in kids is a positive. It's not a negative. The other piece that they can look at, as some of my colleagues have mentioned, is this assets-based conversation being around a connected consolidation in regional schools. We heard a lot, and I think it's great that we have these conversations around the class sizes being so small. The schools being so small, inability to be able to support extracurricular activities, which drive kids. They keep kids in school. They get them excited about school, they create local school spirit. As well as the fact that you have this tremendous body and so what you're trying to do in the classroom, and the kids have the opportunities to be able to participate in course, be in a drama production, be allowed to be able to play in the sports that they're looking to be able to do, as well as the fact that not just the field of varsity team, but like a JV and a freshman team, even if it's able, we want all kids to participate after school, because those learning opportunities are huge. But the issues around all of this gotta be an access-based conversation, whatever we can do to help the commission with that. I think is paramount to this, and whatever we also can do to make recommendations that the legislature needs to have the power to be able to negotiate, whether it be formulas or something along the lines of saying, okay, if your high school is X amount, you're unable to provide the following services that we want to have for kids. That's equity. If the kids are going to a small school, or if it's too small, the inequities between, one school and any school in Chittenden County, or the larger counties that exist in Vermont, it's not that they're always going to be equal to have the same opportunities, but there's no way they're getting the opportunities that they could get. If we could be able to serve more kids, larger situation, and be able to get the kids to be able to, again, benefit from an asset-based conversation, right? How we can be able to get our folks to get excited about education again, and not be so concerned solely in spending it. We got plenty of dollars here. How can we spend them more wisely?
This is, I think, there's been a lot of talk of consolidation. I'm definitely not against consolidation in any way, but I think it also needs to be said that for me growing up here and for my kids, one of the things I value very much about Vermont schools is how the school is such a tight community, and it's a really unique thing. Where the teachers know all the students know all the teachers, and there's just a really tight network. And I think that also has a lot of value that we can't forget about. And I think there are definitely places we can consolidate and give more opportunity. But as long as we don't lose sight of what we have and that tradition that we have, I think a lot of this value.
I want to start by saying thank you to the commission, because this is going to be such a hard job, and I appreciate how exciting your time is. We've talked a lot about consolidation, and I think we can consolidate in ways that improve education for our students. And a lot more listening and community engagement needs to be a really important piece of that work. I think the challenge is that there's this really substantial tension between local control, local vision for education, and local needs related to tax burden. So I'm hoping that there'll be really transparent conversation and a lot of investment in community conversations around what consolidation can look like. A really honest and transparent investigation of what our funding model can look like. It needs to be some sort of hybrid model whereby the third and fourth homes are taxed, their property tax, and there's an income-based model for people who live here perhaps. And I think thirdly, we really do need to have a transparent investigation of funds that we pay as Vermont taxpayers into, and where that money goes, whether it's private schools, whether it's schools out of the country, or whether it's paving roads in various areas of our state. I think we need to understand more transparent where that money is going, and think deeply about where we actually want that money to go, because I know for a fact that our schools are providing tremendous services to our students. I would not want any of that to change. I really appreciate the role that we play in our community in making sure that our students are healthy and well-fed and able to access education in our buildings. But I think it's unfair for our states to ask our public schools to continually do more and more and more, and from the ire of the community because we're expensive.
I think I would just add that consolidation doesn't have to equal closed schools. And if you allow those communities to sort of dream big about what that school would look like and what the available spaces at the building could be, maybe it's a doctor's office that can, you know, charge to Medicaid, maybe it's daycare to provide the after-school care. Whatever it is, like, I don't think it has to mean closing those small community schools. I think consolidation could just mean making a district bigger. So that in my AP stats class, I can have enough kids to generate the necessary data to make my lesson work. Instead of having 12 kids, I can have my 12 kids and 5 kids at Montclair and maybe 12 more kids from Spalding and Almson.
Thank you very much for all the conversation, both the small conversation and sharing it as a whole. I'm going to just very quickly share the next immediate steps of the commission. Obviously, you know where we're headed in terms of our charge. But here's the near future. We want to continue to have these conversations. We want to get better at these conversations. Although I really appreciate how tonight went. We know we want to do that both in person, we want to do that online. We know we had a lot of folks dropping in and listening to the conversation, which I really appreciate. And it is really difficult to do that well in both formats, so we want to make sure that we have online only forums. We want an input tool for people that can't come out, can't come log in, or don't want to, or have other ways to engage. So we really want to continue to work on that. We know we are going to refine our work plan. Right now, we are really focused on that December preliminary report, so that we can give the General Assembly some information. And that's what that, well, it is, but you all can't see, but that preliminary consultation and recommendation is. So that's our work. We do have a few more minutes. We wanted to surface conversation about those 3 sets of questions, and I feel like we got a really good, set of perspectives. But we also want to give folks the opportunity to share something that didn't fit into any one of them. So with our last few minutes, that's really what we have. Oh, perfect.
Just have a question. I know the Agency of Education is going around doing their listening tour. How does that fit with what you guys are doing?
Perfect, thank you. And I'll start with the way we can plan. The commission was convened by the General Assembly with the charters that we talked about today, and in many ways, this was put on the table before the agency was kind of building its plan. So we know as a commission, on the commission side of things, and so we talk about the agency side, we also benefit from the information that we are going to get from other work that's already happening. We don't have enough time, even if we do as kind of yeoman's work on communication and engagement, we're not going to be able to get it other work. So there's lots of work happening in the state, and we want to benefit from that and see it as information, as data perspective. And one of those things is we'll learn a lot from what the agency is working on. It is both, it is separate, it is kind of, it's really important work that the agency is doing for them. And we will benefit from that, and we also have our own separate charge. And we kind of recognize, especially in the early going, and it's a little funky. So I'll let them make it.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the question. So the Agency of Education is excited to engage with the field on the Listen and Learn tour. We're looking to start the process actually last spring, but because of the time, we do feel like it was the right time to really engage educators. And so we've been working really intentionally to develop a planning process and try to align that with the commission to create synergy where we can. It is a separate body of work, and then the Listen and Learn tour is helping us develop the agency's strategic plan to ensure we can align our support, resources, and initiatives to meet the needs of education priorities across Vermont. We recognize that through that planning process, there's a lot of ideas that will follow up that will be helpful and informative to the commission. And we've committed to being really collaborative in that work and sharing that information to also support the commission's broader charge of developing more systemic changes for the state as we think about the future of education. So they're related, but we are really working very intentionally to move forward and be very coordinated with how the communications messaging is updated.
Questions, do I remember from today, taking my questions?
So, my new superintendent, 115 or so days in right now. So the first thing I wanted to do before I kind of in the sense that we're wrapping up here, I wanted to thank all of the community for coming out. It's great to hear the perspective that the community brings in important to the commission. You all have been here for a long time today. Many of them got here at like 12:30 this afternoon, maybe even sooner than that. Really appreciate the hard work and the thoughtfulness that you have going on. As I mentioned when I joined your meeting earlier today, I'm excited about the work that you're doing around a vision for Vermont education, making sure that we are aiming for a target that is in the future, not looking back necessarily as towards what our target needs to be. I think you've heard what I've heard from people tonight is that vision is going to have to look a little bit, three big areas that I want to highlight for you. It's going to have to look at your facilities. You happen to be in the facility in the state of Vermont, the Boyne Staircase, I think that's what it was, study, has identified as the building that is in most need of replacement in the state. It's about $200 million, give or take, to replace it. And I think we're probably not super unique and we're not the only building in the world that needs to be replaced. How many of those buildings, when Jay talked about hundreds of millions, and maybe we actually need to start using the word building. Five of these buildings is a building. So, staffing. We talk about small class sizes and whatnot. No, really, I've said it to, I think I said it to Rebecca at one point that I wasn't worried about people passing budgets. I think they'll pass. I said it to Secretary French. I said it to, I think I said it to you, right? I think the budgets will be passing. My real concern is that from a staffing standpoint, we can't continue to staff. Right now, the Orange Southwest School District has about 20 people on provisional license, 20 professional staff members on a provisional license, about 120 professional staff members. And if you do the math, that tells you that about 17% of our teaching population has not finished the teacher prep program. They're 2 years away from that. So yes, we have small class sizes. And we have people who are very dedicated, many of our faculty and staff here today, and I'm proud of them. I'm proud of the people on the provisional licenses. I'd also like to see if we had that training be able to happen before we needed those folks in the classroom. Make no mistake, we could not have opened this year without those 20 people, right? So we need them, we appreciate it, and it's hard work that they're doing. It's a full-time load and learning to be teachers at the same time. And finally, we heard it in multiple ways today, the mental health crisis that is in Vermont.
And you've heard it right in this auditorium tonight, where you had, faculty and staff talk about, we are the mental health hub, we are a regular health hub. We have washing machines in all of our schools, and we do laundry for families. You know, when you think about the story of the blueberry, I don't know, I didn't quite get it here, I gotta get it in my notes, but we've taken on a lot as education systems. Things that really aren't educational, except how does a student with a toothache that's not getting treated somewhere else, how can they be successful? How can they be successful if mental health is where it needs to be? If they're walking around in dirty clothes, people don't want to be around them. You know, so that's what we're up against, and as a commission, I hope and appreciate that you come out and you hear those stories, and you know that what you're talking about, whatever you come up with for a vision, there's always gonna be people out there that are gonna say, no, you didn't get it, you missed this, you missed that. What I'll tell you is, right now, it will be a more complete vision than what we've operated in Vermont for at least the last 10-ish years. So I appreciate the work you're doing, appreciate the time you're putting here, and I won't take any more of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and that reminds me that, I neglected to let the superintendent Clark welcome you here this morning, so this is. We've been here at the beginning of the meeting, so, I also just want to extend a thank you to the superintendent Clark, students at the Career Center who fed us today. We have occupied 2 of your spaces, used your technology, your staff has been wonderful. Students have been wonderful, and you were willing to be the first host and guinea pig, so we really appreciate that. Screen, mission members are here, so if I have any questions, and give us your thoughts, give us your feedback. You can, the agency website has my email address, which is probably the most efficient way to say, hey, think about doing it this way next time. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.